In Touch with iOS, episode number 20, a podcast for sharing tips, apps, and gear for iPhone and iPad, along with related technologies that get us using iOS in fun, productive, and meaningful ways. I'm your host, Melissa Davis, and joining me, as always, is David Ginsburg. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing great. How are you? Glad to be here.
Busy.
Yeah, me too. I was actually, since getting back from vacation, it's very busy at work. A lot of stuff going on, and it's a new year.
Hit the ground running?
Oh yeah, it's a lot of things going on this year. So it's going to be a very busy year, I think. But that's a good thing. Keeps us out of trouble.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, but Apple continues to have a lot of things to talk about out there. It's always a great topic, and iOS is no different than any other topics out there. So,
well, this podcast is going to become very important for a lot of people. I can tell there's a lot going on, and we'll dig right into it. So let's first start talking about, we kind of have two main topics this time around. And the first one, and this is kind of an ongoing topic. We'll always talk about this because it's essential to our subject matter. And that is about podcast apps. And when I say podcast apps, I'm meaning podcast consumption apps. Mm-hmm. And this is, a little bit selfish in a way. I'm actually going to be giving a little informal presentation next month at my local mug. You're the president of your mug, and I'm a member of my mug finally.
Oh, good.
And so I'm trying to cut my teeth and give some presentations and stuff. So one of the things that people want to know about is what are podcasts, and we're doing one right now, but people won't hear it unless they know what it is and how to get at it. So we thought we'd talk about some different podcasting consumption apps that, not to make a podcast, but to listen to a podcast. And one of these days, if I get the time, you know how it is with me and time, I would love to sit down and, make some tutorial videos and, because it's one thing to get people to listen to it, but it's like putting the cart before the horse, so to speak.
Yeah.
They have to see how to do it and, hold their hand. And I'm always thinking about this because, I work with senior citizens as, Silver Surfer set, and they'll ask me about it. What is it? How do I get to it? And a couple of them have surprised me that they know what Serial is. Did you listen to the Serial podcast?
I've listened to bits and pieces of it. I don't remember. It's been a while. It
didn't hook you, huh?
No, it didn't. I did try.
I'll tell you, there was 2 seasons. The first season hooked me, but the second season, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's like This American Life. You have to either you like it or you don't.
Yeah, it's either going to get you or it's not. It's a genre. It's it's a crime mystery. It's like a whodunit kind of a thing, but it's real life. I mean, it's a nonfiction. It's based on something that actually happened. And then the same thing also with S-Town, and this is a family-friendly podcast, so I can't tell you what that actually means, but most people know it. And if you look up S-Town, you'll figure it out. That was a fantastic
I remember
podcast.
Those now. I just
did you
you
listen to it?
Again, bits and pieces. It didn't hook me either. But people were saying all kinds of stuff about it. I remember that was last episode on S-Town was back in March of 2017. Yeah,
it was the thing. It was like the podcast of last year. It was like the thing that in our circles, our social circles of people that we kind of congregate with. People are talking about it's the podcast movement, and this is what's going to put podcasting on the map. And it like Serial did. I mean, it made people that are in their 80s talking about podcasts. That have you heard of the Serial podcast? And you just kind of look at them like, wait, first of all, you know what a podcast is? Second of all, you've listened to this whole season of these episodes. And I mean, it's kind of like a bit of an audio soap opera, if you will. Again, these, things are based on true stories. Some of them are not. Some of them are fictional. Like I said, Serial and S-Town, those are based on true stories, true life. And that's what makes them so compelling. It's like, wow, this actually happened. With S-Town, I was thinking, like, as I was listening to it, I was getting so excited. It puts you on a roller coaster of emotions because it's a very sad story. Because I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone, but it's it's dramatic and it's about someone's life and things that happened in their life. And as I was listening to it, I remember thinking to myself, I need a support group for this. Yeah. Like, I need someone else that I can talk to about this. This is so good. And then as it was catching on, finally there was a Facebook group that was created. And so finally my support group arrived and people could go in there and share their stories about the main person that it was about and that sort of thing. So that was really great. And I really hope that I look forward to as we start this new year, maybe there'll be something new. Like, what's it going to be? I wonder what it's going to be. You know, what's going to be like the big story, you know, that's going to happen. So it would be nice.
And then
it'd be nice if it was this podcast, but you know, we're not as juicy.
Oh, and then as I was right. This serial was by the producers, a spun off of This American Life, which is actually produced in Chicago. So, so yeah, I mean, it's a lot. There's millions of people listening to that podcast all by itself, and it's very popular. So that's what's great about podcasting and podcasts. There's just so much. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and a lot of the mainstream media is getting in on the act. I mean, it took them a long time to finally realize how popular they really are.
Yeah, we better put out like a podcast feed just to catch those, you know, to catch that audience. And like NPR does it. And I think it's fantastic because then I can listen to it whenever I want. I'm not one of those people. I mean, you know, I'm a busy mom. I just, said how busy I am. I like to be able to time travel. I like to be able to listen at my leisure, you know, be able to pause it and, you know, deal with interruptions and stuff and rewind it when I zone out. So that's what I really love about being able to listen to that kind of stuff. Do you want to dive into some apps or, you know, I guess one of my big questions is out of the apps, you have a list of apps here. One of the things that I've been serving people about, like I said, I'm going to be doing a presentation on, so I'm kind of gathering research and I'm trying to learn, you know, what is it for the non-techie person, for the person who maybe hasn't yet discovered us? How do we get them? How do we get them to get to us? How do we get our knowledge into their brains, so to speak, because we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of stuff that we want to share. We really want people to become in touch with iOS. We want them to learn how to use their devices and how to interact with the operating system so that it becomes this thing that, and we're going to talk about this later, that they're not addicted to, that they can just pick up, get what they need out of it and put it down again, you know? How do we get there? So what are some of the apps that you've discovered that help people discover podcasts? You know, there's obviously there's the podcast app that comes with your iPhone. That's what I was going to kind of start with that because the podcast app is you really can't resist it because the app is there. When anybody gets their iPhone or iPad for the first time, that's the first app's going to be installed. So that's the first app that everybody's going to look at. I mean, looking at trends of what people listen to when they're listening on to any podcast, I mean, that's generally going to be the number one. The rest of them, I put down here at least 4 or 5 others. Well, I got 6 others. But I mean, I didn't even list my 2 top favorite ones besides, I'm not a huge fan of the podcast app for app, I'll be honest with you. I think it works great for people who just want a simple way to be able to searching, because the great thing about it is it's linked with iTunes, and that's where people get most of their traffic. I mean, yeah, they're going to listen to the podcast on a website. You know, we obviously when you listen to our podcast, you can listen to it, you know, right from the player that's right there, as well as getting it from our feeds. But the podcast app that's there, and then for anybody who doesn't know what the term is of what a podcast app really is, it's an aggregator. It's grabbing all of these episodes in one place instead of you going to a website and have to scroll through this long, lengthy page. But people do it. So it really allows you to be able to aggregate all of those episodes in one place. Now, I'll look at the list. My all-time favorite one is Downcast, and I've told you that a million times. Right. I don't have it on our list here for this episode, but we can add it. But the reason why I like it is I'm used to it, and I like the way the interface is. I'm able to control what can be downloaded. I'm able to download what I want. I'm able to stream it. So that, again, you have the choices. I mean, that's what some people do. They want to download the episode so they don't have to be streaming it and taking up any of their cell data. So they download the episode. But I think the last I checked here, and I'm subscribing, I think I'm subscribed to something like 84 different podcasts. Do I listen to all 84 of them? No. But it feels good to have them all in your pocket there.
Exactly. And I can glance at each one of them and I say, hey, oh, wow, this looks interesting. You know, I go anywhere from, the majority of it's on here for me because of my interest is technology, of course. But I have some sports. I have some things local to where I live in Chicago. And a lot of our friends who are in podcasting, another interest might be eBay. Other interests like all kinds of different podcasts. So that's really, when you think about podcasting and aggregating all these in one place, that's what's nice. And then you can choose. Okay, yeah, looks like something was done today. So then when you get this episode in your feed for us, you'll see that it was, if you were to look at it today or tomorrow, whenever we publish, it'll say it was just published today or tomorrow or the next day or wherever. So what are some analog things that you could compare podcasting to? Like the first thing that comes to my mind is carrying on a Walkman. Yeah. When we used to carry around Cassettes,
a Walkman, and you might have like a cassette case that you'd keep all your cassettes in. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean,
do you remember that?
Oh, totally. I mean, I was talking about it on iChart Radio this past week when I was on with Michael Plant, and we started talking about this, and will be our next topic.
The good old days.
I'll bring that up in our next topic. I mean, that was the good old days. Well, I don't know. I mean, I look back and I just saw the movie The Post, and that was
how was that?
It was a very good movie, and
I love Tom Hanks.
A lot of good history, and you just look at how their technology was back in those days. I mean, the typesetting, how they printed a newspaper. I mean, you got guys sitting in a print room and they're putting the blocks in and making the front page with the images that are on the metal when it goes to printing press, and everything was a typewriter, and anybody who had to get a hold of anybody was on a landline phone with a rotary dial. I started looking at this and I'm like, oh my God, do I remember that stuff?
When you have kids, it really blows your mind. Every time we travel and my kids see a payphone, they're like, Mommy, what's that?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
they never grew up in that world. So, but yeah, I mean, it's come a long way, and that's what's great about us in having these smart devices, is being able to now listen to any of this stuff in one place. When you had a Walkman, you had to have, like you said, I used to have that box of 15. I would carry around those cassettes, and then
I had the fake leather case.
Exactly. I had the plastic
opened up
one
with a little gold buckle, and
I had the plastic one where you pulled it open. I had now 15 cassettes, and I always record them. I mean, I'm going back even further. I used to have an open reel deck, a reel-to-reel player, so I would have those kind of analog tapes too.
And remember when did you try to record stuff off the radio? I had a Panasonic
totally
tape recorder, and we'd stand there, and I got really good at being able to press and click the buttons at the same time to get it just right to cut off the radio announcer. Well,
see, I was an AV geek, surprisingly, when I was in high school.
Me too.
Going back,
I pushed around the TV cart when I was in junior high. I was in the AV club.
16 millimeter projectors.
That's why we get along so well.
That's right. So I did that, but then I got to do the sound back in those days for one of the dance groups for high school, and again back in those days it wasn't like it is now, where how do we edit this
podcast?
Yeah, how do we edit this podcast? We go in the GarageBand and we're doing our cuts. Well, I'm doing on big open reel decks. This is sitting in a recording room in school, and I have these reel to reels. They're sitting on and each song is spliced together with a little leader, and that's the next song that comes up, and you have a blank spot between each, so you don't play the music too soon. And sitting in the room with the girls, and they say, I want to cut it here, I want to cut it here, and then I got my razor blade and cutting the tapes and splicing it all together. I did all that stuff.
What cut, copy, and paste mean in the literal analog sense.
Like I said, talk to your sons now and tell them that stuff, and they'd be like, "What are you talking about?" So it just thinking about that, the way technology has evolved. I mean, go back into with podcasts as our topic here. Yeah, I mean. Anybody doesn't remember, I used to listen to all the time. If you remember the CBS Radio Mystery Theater, they used to every night I would listen to the local CBS station here in Chicago, and they would always have it on at 10:30 at night, and it'd be E.G. Marshall was the host, and it would be a very eerie mystery type show that they would have on, and that's the kind of things that you want to record, be able to go back and listen to later. And back in those days, what would you do? Like you said, we'd put our recorder next to the radio and and record it. But now you have all these podcasts that are out there, and you do that. So, but like I said, the key word with all these apps are they're called aggregators. And like I said, Downcast is my favorite. There's a number of others.
You know that I still like Castro. Yeah. I mean, listen to you talk about Downcast. I can always say the same things about Castro, and I know that Castro doesn't do video yet, but I don't really exactly have that need. Sure. But that's just it. I think you have to find an app for consuming them, and you have to kind of delve into it. And I've been surveying my friends and family on Facebook, and I've been getting lots of really great feedback from mostly my friends who know what podcasts are and listen to podcasts. I'm hoping as time goes on, I have about a month to prepare for this. So I'm hoping that as time goes on, my family and my non-techie friends will kind of weigh in and at least ask, well, what's a podcast, or, how do I get it? And one of my friends did say, is it like a radio show? And I said, yes, it's very much like a radio show. I think that's probably the closest that we can get to describing what it is, except that with radio is live. You have to be there as it's happening. You can't, if they said something, you can't rewind it. You can't pause it if the kids are screaming in the back seat of the car. So podcasting is something that you can listen to when you want to listen to it. It's aggregated, like you said. You can also curate it. You can take the aggregates and then you curate those aggregates. You can put them in the order that you want to listen to them. You can subscribe or not subscribe. You don't have to, just to be able to listen to a podcast, you don't have to subscribe to it. You can listen to them one off to see if you like them. But then if it's something, hey, I want to listen to more of that, and you want to see how regularly it's delivered, then you subscribe to it. And then it just always shows up in your feed, so to speak. So radio, I would say, I would compare it to, it's like radio in a magazine format. Because magazines is what you would subscribe to. You would subscribe, and a magazine would be delivered to your mailbox every month or every so many weeks or whatever. Or the newspaper, that's a subscription. And so a lot of people kind of they don't get how those work together, and that's how podcasting puts it together. It's like radio that you subscribe to that gets delivered to a device, and you can listen to it whenever you want to listen to it. Well, let's go through some of the apps you did list here. Radio.com. You want to tell us about that one?
There's actually two. I should put this other one in here too that goes along with Radio.com. Radio.com is actually a website, and there are radio stations that subscribe to that service. What the biggest ones are the CBS stations, and there is an app, and you can, and that's the thing. You hit it right in the head here with radio. You can listen to radio stations, obviously streaming all over the world, online as well. So if you don't want to listen to a podcast, you can, you're very welcome to listen to a radio station that's, down the street,
kind of like Pandora in a way, isn't it?
Kind of Pandora, yeah. And you can, I was always interested in radio stations and what the formats they were and what they played, and some have classic rock and some have top 40 and some and every station was different. I would travel to a different city and I would listen to the station. Oh my God, this is a great station. Nowadays you could listen to it online. And again, these apps aggregate the radio stations for you. And now, of course, each station is different. I mean, there's actually three big ones. This is Radio.com. We'll have the other two in the show notes too. Is TuneIn Radio is my other all-time favorite. The nice thing about TuneIn Radio is it does have some podcasters that also are part of the subscription, and you can pay for an added subscription. They have things like the NFL and Major League Baseball and things like that on that app. So you have that one, and then iHeartRadio is another one. I mean, those three are probably the three. If you ever wanted to make sure you got all of the radio stations that are available to you, those are probably my top three when it comes to radio. But the nice thing, like I said, with TuneIn, is they also have podcasters that are subscribed to that as well. And Radio.com and others also have recorded sessions. If something was broadcasted on the radio, you can go back and listen to it as they may record it as a podcast. So that's why I brought that up.
Kind of like NPR. I mean, that's the thing. I don't listen to a lot of radio, radio news shows. Like I kind of have a habit, like in the morning when I drop off the kids, I might turn on the radio and listen to NPR just because that's what I like for news. I mean, that's what I get that's local here. And I'll listen to that for a little bit. Like that'll be a couple minutes of my morning routine. So that's the only time I would ever listen to the radio. But I've kind of stopped doing that a little bit too now, because I just want to listen to more podcasts, and I want to get more of that information. This would probably be a good time to bring up the new Siri podcast feature. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Again, there are so many other podcast apps, so we can't spend all the time in the world. We will have them in the show notes, so you won't don't despair. There are some others. I'll just mention one more that was my second favorite, which is iCatcher. I used to use that one all the time, but Doncast took me over. But let's talk about what Apple just added with Siri. And I don't want to necessarily say the H word, but when you call Siri out, you actually can go out and say, hey phone lady, hey phone lady, what is the news today? And then it'll come back and say, well, here's the latest news from NPR. Or if you prefer saying, hey lady, switch to Fox News
or
Washington Post. If it's part of the podcast app and it relates to news, it will play it for you right off the bat. And what it basically does is that's the thing with the podcast app from Apple. It's built in, so it can go right out to those feeds without even being subscribed. And so I think that's something you're really going to see happening. And I'm sure now with the HomePod that's very much pending to be released here soon, I'm looking forward to at least looking at it. I am not going to buy it, and I will 100% tell you I'm not buying the HomePod, but that's going to be
another
thing.
Hear, folks.
I am not doing it. I'm not doing it. But then that's what the Amazon Echo does and what the Google Home does. So they all are fighting for your virtual speaking, the talk, and that. So yeah, check that out. We'll have a link in the show notes with the article from Mac Rumors that talked about this. It's in iOS 11.2.2, so they released it before. They were originally they were going to release it with the beta that's coming out, the next version, which is 11.2.5. But they decided to release it early, which was kind of surprising. Apple usually doesn't do that. So, but yeah, check that out because that's what people do. I mean, and it links with podcasts, and it also link with the news app. I mean, the news app is another app that you do for actually reading news, but it's more the audio based with podcasting. So, but yeah. No.
So you can't imagine yourself with a digital assistant in your home that you yell at or speak nicely to give you the news.
No, I do it now.
Right. I was going to say, I mean, I do it with my phone. So yeah. I can't say that I will never get a HomePod. I mean, it'll be a long, long time if I do, unless I hit the lottery or something. It's not one of those financially things, that I need. But I have to say, for the longest time, I kept thinking to myself, I just, we have a small house and we have little kids. So my needs are really different. It's not very quiet here most of the time. So it's just not one of those opportunities where I can say a command and ask a device to order new, laundry pods for me or new puppy food or something like that. I just don't really have that need. But I do talk to my phone a lot when I'm in the car and the time that I am at home when the kids are in school. So I kind of can see how having a digital assistant is really helpful. But I already have it built into my phone. The only way that I can sort of kind of imagine it is if there are times when I use my Apple TV as a podcast player. So I have the podcast app on my Apple TV, and occasionally, like I said, I have a small house, so I can get away with this. A lot of people who have, multi-houses, you can, if you use the speaker system, if you have it rigged in such a way, we should probably elaborate that on another episode sometime. Mm-hmm. If you have it rigged in such a way, you can have the speakers play from room to room based on just having Apple TVs in different rooms. So that is possible. You could use your Apple TV as like a hub to play that kind of stuff. Again, it's just it has to be how you like, your personal preference. I like to hear that in my ears, like in my ear holes. I don't want it broadcasting throughout the whole entire house. I think it would probably drive the dog nuts after a while. So I usually have like an earbud in or something to listen to podcasts. It's just how I roll. Occasionally I listen to podcasts in the car I just don't anymore because it's just the way that I've done it. In the past, I used to listen, plug something into the car where it would play it through the speakers. I have a really old car, so I have to kind of finagle it somehow with a device that plugs in, and it's usually an FM transmitter, but then you have to deal with the radio stations and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a hassle. So I've just gotten used to just having one earpod I have my earpiece in my ear. But when the kids would listen to it, as they were little, like when they were really little, I could listen to adult content and I didn't worry as much about it. And then as they got older and their ears, developed, and they would just kind of tune it out, just kind of go into a trance and just be, bebopping in the back seat and let me listen to my podcast. But anymore now, I just listen to it in my ear. So I can't imagine just having it like on speakers. But I know some people who use like a Sonos or they use an Amazon product and they play podcasts through the speakers that way.
Yep.
So there's something to be said for calling out to a device and saying, I want to hear the news delivered to me from this source and tell me what's going on in the world. And there's, if there's a well-known podcast name, like In Touch with iOS, you could tell them, hey, I want to hear what Dave and Melissa are up to and play that and just have it play for you completely hands-free and you don't have to do anything. But back to the apps a little bit, it's nice to be able to curate them in the order that you want to hear them and see them in. And so we'll keep delving into this in future episodes, and maybe we'll highlight or feature like a certain app or something, and we'll just pick it apart, because that's really the thing. I mean, we've settled on our respective favorites, but there's so many other apps out there, and there's reasons for why our favorites are our favorites, but I still want people to know what other options are out there. So for example, I'll just touch on one of the feedback that I got was from Overcast. Now you like Downcast, I like Castro. A lot of people, Overcast seems to be like, a good third runner. A lot of people like that. And that one it's nice because it's free to try, or you can listen to it as long as you want, and it's supported by ads. But then you can pay a subscription fee. It's like, around $10 a month to get rid of the ads. But the nice thing that I was told about the ads, and I don't know if you can vouch for this too, because I haven't seen it firsthand, but some of the ads are featuring other podcasts.
Right.
So it could be that Overcast is a really great one, maybe if it's not the feature set that you like, but for discoverability. So if you're new to podcasts and you want to discover podcasts, if you don't already have some in mind, that might be a good resource for you to jump into, because then it'll get those in front of your eyeballs, like those shows that wouldn't have been pitched to you otherwise. So that's something else to consider for your consideration.
So actually, just on Overcast, I am a subscriber. It's the Overcast Premium. It's only $10 a year.
Oh, I thought it was a month. Okay, I read that wrong.
My gosh,
a year for the whole year. You get it.
The whole year, $9.99.
Well, that's not bad at all.
Yeah. So they give a good deal.
Good.
Yeah, so that's definitely a good deal. Some of these apps are free, and some of them do cost. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's just so many of them out there, and I like Overcast, and then Pocket Cast is another one I have listed in our show notes as well. As another one.
That was another one that people fed back on that they liked. And I think there's reasons for them. You definitely want to, as you're looking at these in the App Store and trying to consider, the thing that I look for is how often is it updated? Right. Because I have tried some that I just won't list here, but there's some that I tried and I thought, I heard of it, and I look into it and it turns out like it's been abandoned or it just hasn't been updated in so long and it's buggy and things don't sync properly. It's like, there's a reason why. So that's just got something to look out for. Look for something that's updated regularly. That's something we should probably delve into in a future episode, is how to evaluate an app, where to look in the App Store, because that's different now. You've got to kind of hunt for some of that information. So that's something to think about if you don't know already, to look at that. So let's you want to go through a couple of the little articles that you have here?
Yeah, okay. Then we'll get into that second topic, which probably is going to be a good one. Apple did seed out the 6th beta of iOS 11.2.5 to developers and public beta testers. So again, we've always told you to steer clear of a beta test if you don't want to expect to have lots of problems and issues. Looks like they're just more they're adding some more stability, and they're also looking at adding some updates related to the HomePod. Stuff that's updating CarPlay for those of you who have CarPlay in your car for playing your iOS device. Nothing has really been clear yet of what new features, if any, will be actually included in 11.2.5. I would venture to say it's probably going to be more of a lot of bug fixes and making it even more stable. Because whenever Apple releases the next big version, they would go the .3 might be a big update, but then of course when we get towards the middle of the year, June, they'll already be starting to talk about iOS 12, which hasn't even been discussed yet. So, but it's just always interesting to see what Apple does with beta testing. But we have that in the show notes. And then the other article I did that caught my eye was there was an innocent link that could cause some big problems, and this has happened before. What it basically was another strange bug that they found, like when you would click a certain URL of the link that's in Messages, and this seems to have happened before. I seem to recall this.
Yeah, that's why I said again.
Yeah.
Would you classify this as a Trojan horse?
I don't know, because it's unlike in the Windows world, when you were to click a link, your machine would be pretty much hosed. At least these devices, even other than that, it is causing some problems with messaging. You obviously you need to. What it basically does is it causes the device to maybe crash, it may even restart. Could cause some other issues. But
is this just like something that kids do and like, haha, look what I can do? I made your phone crash. Like that kind of a. Yeah,
it what it was called. It was it was uncovered by somebody on Twitter. It's called Chai OS, which an issue which is caused by what it looks like is an innocent GitHub, which is a site that has a lot of different types of software, and then receiving it on a device running a Mac OS or iOS, and it causes a whole host of they call frustrating problems. Again, the reason why I brought this up is, and I think everybody should know this: be aware of what you're clicking. Don't click links. If someone sends you a link and if it seems kind of strange, delete the message. Don't mess with it, and just be careful out there, because there are some bad people out there who like to cause havoc on your device. So I think it's all really much I wanted to say on that. So I think we should go.
I will use that as a segue and say that there's a reason why parents need to help their kids navigate the digital world and these iOS devices, because that particular news story that you just shared with us is something that I could see a lot of teenagers falling victim to. Their kids, their prefrontal cortexes are not developed, and they're impulsive, and they'll want to click on things and tap on things, and who's this? This is from a friend, or maybe this is someone I want to impress, so I better probably answer their text. So there's reasons for why parents still need to guide their children on this. So our next main topic for the other half of the show is what I like to call, should Apple be your nanny? There's been a lot of news about this. You said you talked about it on another podcast. Last night at my local mug, I was a little put on the spotlight because I'm the mommy. So, hey, what do you think about this? And I had a little bit of a rant on my Instagram feed. I was frustrated after reading that long letter that was sent to Apple from Jana Partners. That's what we're talking about here. Yeah. There was a big long letter kind of scathing, pointing the finger at Apple, that basically blaming Apple for making their devices addictive and, we just can't put them down. And, Apple, you should really do something about this. You have an opportunity and a responsibility to the youth that use your devices. And you really should build in some features at the top level that say, how old are you again? And all these switches and things. And so, I've been talking to some colleagues about this. I've been talking to some other parents and some experts in the field, actually, and I've been reading lots of articles. And of course, I have my own opinions. And I had some of my own biases going into this. But then when I read the letter, I read every letter of it, literally, my biases still remained. There's a couple of things that jumped out at me that you have to think critically about this. The claims that they're making. What claims are they making? And of course, in the letter, and we have a link to it. There's been lots of links to it, and we'll relink to it, and you can read it for yourself. But it basically I would say in a nutshell, is they are investors. There's probably a bit of a money trail that we have to follow here. They are saying that Apple should be more responsible for the health and well-being of the people who use their devices and do something to basically be a nanny, like basically be like a gatekeeper of decision making. And I and a lot of my colleagues and a lot of parents that I talk to and experts in the field kind of take issue with this, that and this is something I didn't tell you about pre-show, but I was going to ask you, have you watched the Black Mirror series on Netflix?
I have not.
Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
I highly recommend it. And there is an episode, and I will put this in the show notes. I want to say it's called Archangel or something like that. But every time I think about this subject, because I just watched it, so it's fresh on my mind. There's a series of, I want to say there's 4 seasons, and there's probably like around 7 or 8 episodes per season. So Black Mirror is a futuristic, dark drama, if you will, and it basically delves into what would life be like, each of these episodes, what would life be like if technology were used in this way. And it's kind of futuristic, and it kind of touches on some of the stuff that we have now, but like kind of really tweaked up a notch. People that have like ocular implants, and one episode was all about arranged dating, that you basically would be assigned to a partner to go on a date, and you'd have this little pod that you carry around, a device. Everything in most all of the episodes is centered around some kind of device, something that we carry around or that we attach, some kind of wearable, and it's got us basically connected to the wide web in all these ways. And this one episode was about dating and how, basically you were given a set amount of time to date a person. And then when the time was up, you parted ways, and then you went on to the next, it was like, speed dating, but with an internet online device technology kind of twist. And then the one that really makes me think about this parenting thing is the one that was about surveillance. It was about a mom, a single mom who had a child, and this, you look at these things and it takes place sometime in the future, but you don't know when, or maybe it's set to feel like it's in the future, but it's actually happening now. And it's a single mom who has this daughter, and the daughter goes running after a kitten, and she goes missing. And so spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want to know all about it, I won't try to spoil it too much, but basically she gets an app and a tablet, and she installs it on her kid, and she basically surveils her kid. And so the episode is all about what could happen if, like, I've always joked about this, and I'm half serious, but I'm half joking. There are times when you're a parent and you have children, like even my dog just got spayed, and we had her microchipped. And I joke and I say, if I could microchip my kids, I probably would. The closest I can get is giving them a device so that I can track their location. But it is really, really scary. I mean, this is a huge responsibility. And kids can go off, and it's not like we were talking about at the top of the show. It's not like when we were kids when we could just record stuff on cassette players. It's not that way anymore. There aren't payphones everywhere. And even though there are cell phones everywhere, it's still not the same thing. You cannot give a child a quarter and say, good luck, and come back when the street lights come on. It's just not that way anymore. And so more and more, parents, we get built up, and we get a lot more paranoid. And so it is interesting to entertain the idea of surveilling your child, of trying to track them somehow so that you can see where they're going to be when they're going to be there. We're running into an issue. That's why I wanted to bring this up, is because I have an 11-year-old. Now that sounds really young. I think I read somewhere that the average age of a child these days getting a cell phone is 10. So I have a late bloomer by those standards, but we are on the brink of giving our child a cell phone to take to school, because more and more we keep running into, he's getting more independent. He's starting to be more involved in after school activities, and sometimes those activities change, or, we were told to meet him at one place, but really we need to meet him somewhere else. And so somebody's, stuck waiting there. So just for the sheer, not even just for the convenience, but for the safety, for the efficiency, it's starting to really tug on us. And it's not like he's begging us. Like, he's not one of those kids like, can I have an iPhone? Can I have an iPhone? Because he's already had an iPod. He's grown up with this since he was a child. So I call it, like the tractor, kind of like, if you've been a kid and if you were raised on a farm and you drove a tractor, even if you drove like your parents' riding lawnmower or something, you've had some experience driving some kind of vehicle. So by the time it's time for you to drive an automobile, a car out on the street, you had just a little bit more experience than kids who have never gotten behind a steering wheel, like not even played with their parents in the driveway. You know what I mean? So there's this kind of like tractor before the car experience. It's like an iPod before the iPhone experience. And my kids have grown up with that. And I purposely and intentionally and thoughtfully, at least I hope so, expose them to these things so that when they do have a phone, I'm hoping that they'll have that experience and they'll have a little bit better sense of making decisions versus a kid who, hey, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, Happy Hanukkah, here's a phone, with no thought behind it that, oh, here's a phone. Oh, you don't even have an email address. You don't know how to text, but that's what's happening. There are parents out there that are giving kids these devices without really a lot of forethought because they haven't really prioritized it in their lives. So it's just something that I want to be talking about and I want to be bringing up, but I still don't think that Apple needs to be your nanny. I don't think that Apple needs to have so much control because just from experience, just from setting up, say, a Mac, just from setting up a computer for my kids, the parental control, it's not that they're bad. It's just that there are so many toggles and switches that you can switch on that will actually prevent you from using the computer at all. Like if you go and you say, okay, the kids can only go to these websites that have been whitelisted for, that these are considered safe websites, you go and you sit down and it's like Dropbox alone will try to throw up, 17 different sites because there's all these, this is just an example and I'm embellishing a little bit, but there are services and sites that the kids these days need to log into, even just for school, let alone services like Evernote and Dropbox and iCloud and all these things where there are other websites that need to open up behind the scenes. If you ever want to find out just how much is going on, if you ever really want to get creeped out, turn on parental controls and just completely, be explicit about what you're allowed to actually access. And you will see how many times you have to enter in that parent password. And it's just maddening. So I have a problem with switches and toggles and things that are just being completely turned off at the top level. I want the granular control. I want what is there right now. We have guided access. That's something that I use. I'll talk about that in a little bit. There are already tools that are set up in iOS right now, even, since older versions. I mean, I've told you before, my kids have older devices and even the parental controls that are in there are still pretty good. There are certain things that I would like to see, like, maybe I would like the ability to be able to disable YouTube, a better way to disable YouTube just temporarily, I don't want my child watching that unsupervised for long periods of time. Sure. Don't install the app, right? That's one way. Or, you can restrict that app. You can turn on restrictions by age, but then they can't use certain apps that are rated adult that aren't really not necessarily harmful to kids, I don't think. But then, you're talking about like the whole browser. You can't use the browser. Or, I want my children to be able to have access to YouTube. There are things I want them to be able to watch. They need it for school. There's so many times where we're doing like a science fair project and we need to be able to watch instructional videos and things like that.
Right. I
don't want to completely deny their access. And that's what scares me about and why I think about things like Black Mirror and this Archangel surveying your child thing. If you put so many filters and you throw so many toggle switches to the off position or just completely deny access, you're going to create a world for your kids where they won't be able to make good decisions. They won't be able to know how to make choices. They won't know how to interact with things the way that they should. In the episode, if you ever watch it, there's basically something that happens. I don't want to give too much of it away, but there's something that happens where the mom flips a switch in this interface and she doesn't give it a second thought. And that a lot of parents are like that. I'll just turn this on and it'll be good. And I won't have to think about it. It'll do my parenting for me. And as you see in the episode, what happens is the child is so filtered to the point where she doesn't know how to react appropriately to certain stimuli. I'll just leave it at that. But there's something bad that can happen when you have too much control and not enough of a balance. And it just felt like in this letter that they were asking for more and more and more control, and that, oh, well, they were going to be behind it. They were going to invest in it, and that they, I agree with, Apple's doing lots and lots of research in the health spectrum. I mean, look at what they're doing with HealthKit. It's not like they're not invested. It's not like they don't care about the health of the users, the people who buy their products. Of course they care about the health. Why would they be doing HealthKit? So yeah, there are features that they could be rolling out that help us see, how long we've spent on certain apps. But I mean, there's got to be some personal responsibility here. You can't just ask a company like Apple to say, okay, give me these. I just want a big radio button. I just want to click that button that turns everything off. I just want my kid to have access to these things and these things alone, and filter everything else out. The kid's not going to be able to make decisions appropriately, right, is what my fear is. So that's what I wanted to say about it. I have a couple of links that I'll put in the show notes. There is a book that I highly recommend. It's called Screenwise, Helping Kids Thrive and Survive in Their Digital World. It's written by Devorah Heitner, and I'm actually enrolled in her PhoneWise bootcamp right now because, like I said, we are, on the brink of giving our child a cell phone and sending him to school with a cell phone, and we want him to be responsible for it. It's a really wonderful thing. It's, a group of parents that get together. There's weekly calls. There's worksheets. There's, I can hear it right now. I can hear the eyes rolling from some parents. They're like, oh, that's just too much work. You know what? It is work. When you give your child the keys to a car, they need to learn how to learn the rules of the road. They need to learn how to not only do they need to learn how to operate the mechanical device that an automobile is, they need to learn how to drive on the road and how to use turn signals and how to obey traffic signals and etiquette and all kinds of things. It's really no different when you give them a device. So why wouldn't you be putting as much effort into it to send them to, if you're going to send them to driving school, if you're going to have to spend, hours with them on the road logging driving time, it should be the same with a digital device, in my opinion. So, and that's what we've been doing. And so I really highly recommend reading a book on it, going to her website. It's called Raising Digital Natives. And she has a blog where she posts, helpful articles and writes about it. She goes and speaks to parent groups and schools all across the country. She's actually close to you, Dave, and in the Midwest there. Chicago. And lots of fantastic resources. I wanted to plug that and link to that in our show notes. So go check that out if you have any questions about it. Sorry, this was my rant on parenting in the digital age. I'm very passionate about it, if you couldn't tell. And I just have a lot of thoughts about it. Well, what are your thoughts about it, Dave? I know you talked about it a little bit at length.
Yeah, I did talk about it on iChart Radio with Michael LaPont. If you want to hear that episode, go listen to this past week's episode. A couple comments I'll make in relates to what this letter was as far as what they're looking for to control. Everybody is addicted to their smartphones. Let's face it. I am. I look at social media every day. I look at my phone every day. There isn't a day I go by that doesn't. I don't look at my phone. But what to say that you don't have children that are addicted to games, playing video games, PlayStation board, your Nintendo, your Xbox. I mean, they get addicted to that too. It just really comes and boils down to, again, I don't have kids, so I can't comment as personal experience, but there's just places that I think the parents have to be held responsible sometimes if this is such an issue that we need to look at. Okay, are they using these devices too much? There isn't a day that goes by I look around and walking the streets, you see somebody looking down at their smartphone. Let's face it.
It's adults too. They're modeling the behavior for the kids.
Right, exactly. So it's adults as well as children. The teenagers are that's all they know. So and I don't want to go down to too much other comment to relate to that, but I don't understand how they think that Apple's going to come up with something that is going to help this potential what they call issue out.
I think it's going to cause. I don't know. I hope I'm proven wrong, but at this point in time in the juncture, I feel like it has the potential to cause more problems than it solves. And I just feel like there's just too much asking for too much control. Like, just let us do what we need to do. We just need more education. There already are controls in place. We need to learn how to use those controls better. And then maybe we can come up with some more fine tuning. Yeah. But I don't think enough people have given enough thought to the controls that are already on there.
Right.
I see so many kids, and I personally, I don't like to use the word addiction. I think that's a very strong word. Yep. And I'm very sensitive to tech shaming. I think tech shaming is really hurtful and harmful and wrong. I will defend. I'm very defensive. I'm unapologetic when it comes to that. I think that there's a time and a place for technology. And I think too many people, and I'm not picking on you personally, but I think a lot of people are just want to use the A word and say, oh, it's an addiction, so we have to solve it. It's a problem. I don't see it always that way. I don't want to just paint it with such a broad brush that everything is an addiction. Right. I think that there is a level of appropriateness that maybe isn't explored. I think that people are too quick to shame people, like somebody was telling me the other day that, oh, how sad was it that they saw a family driving in a car and all the kids had their heads buried in their devices. Yeah. And they immediately just thought that that was a sad state of affairs. And I will tell you, that my family and I do long, extensive road trips. Sure. And there are times when, yes, you need to give the children some devices. I have a child who has car sickness. There are times when he needs to chill out and play a game or something silly. I mean, they play air hockey on an iPad. There are plenty of things, but why don't we replace, if you were to say, okay, look at that family driving down the road. Isn't it so sad? Those children, those poor children, look at their little noses buried in those books. Oh my goodness. Or, look at those people on the subway reading those newspapers. Oh, for shame. How dare they? They're not paying attention to their world. Isn't that so sad, Dave? It's like, just replace it and think about what you're saying. Just because it's a backlit display, just because it's a device, doesn't necessarily mean it's such a terrible thing. What if the child is reading a book on a Kindle? What if a child is reading a book on an iPad? It's just because it's a backlit display, it's still a book. They're still engaged. They're still educating. They're still feeding their little minds a lot more than some people are. So I just caution people to think before you judge about kids and their tech, and it's not all terrible.
Nope. All right, we've been on our bandwagon for a bit on here with this topic. Let's
reel me in.
let's the remaining minutes we have left here. Let's hit up on some of the cool gear we found. I'll start. I had a Apple gift card, so I had to burn a hole in my pocket. So I had to find a really nice device to purchase with it. It wasn't that much money, but I did find. The wireless charging is becoming the big thing now, and you have an iPhone 8 now, iPhone 8 Plus, and Apple sells this at their Apple Store. It's the Belkin Boost Up wireless charging pad. And actually is a pretty gosh darn good charging device. It's a nice round disc that just sits on your desk or any place you want. It's got a power plug that it plugs into, and you just plop it right on there, and it starts charging. And it's all wireless. I mean, well, I guess people, when they think is it wireless, well, it still has to be plugged in, right?
It's still plugged into a wire.
It really is wireless because you don't have to fumble around getting your lightning cable and plugging it into the jack to get it to charge. So, and the Q is the charging is actually very fast, which is nice. It's the Qi charge technology, which is I'm thrilled that Apple decided. That we've talked about this before. I'm thrilled that they've gone to this universal technology, and I think it's going to become.
They've embraced the standard.
Now that Apple's on board, I think it's just going to be a complete standard across the board because I'm starting to see other manufacturers come on board with the Qi technology as well. So, it's $59.95 at the Apple Store. It's in white and it's blends in. It's nice. It just it just does its work, and it.
Why do you suppose they're circular? Like the device is actually rectangular.
Well, because I think because it's a disc, they want it to be able to lay flat on the for the device. But just like Apple did show their charging pad that's supposed to be coming out later this year is more of an oval shape because it's also going to be able to charge the Series 3 Apple Watch. So you'll be able to charge all your devices across the board. So, but I mean, if you're looking for a nice device that sits nicely on your desk, I think it's a decent buy, and it's not too terribly expensive. And you had a device too.
Yeah, actually, we actually got some feedback. Believe it or not, you can actually go to our website at intouchwithios.com, and there's a contact page, and you can actually write to us and send requests. And I mentioned in our last episode that I had gotten a new case, and I had also gotten a ring that goes on that case. It's a magnetic. It's an adhesive ring that sticks onto the case with an adhesive, but then it also has a mount that goes into the car's vent, and then it's magnetic. So you just stick it on there, and it's just a magnet. And so someone asked me what that was, and so I wanted to link to that.
I see the message came in last night. Thank you for the feedback. That's great.
Yeah. So keep that coming. So I have a link to that in the show notes, and it shows some pictures of what it looks like. And I just love it. I just really love it. I love that it's like a kickstand. You can rotate it, set the phone down. It's so nice to be able to pick it up and not feel like I'm going to drop it. And then when I get in my car, I just use the magnetic plate. I just flip up the ring and stick it on the plate, and away I go. So I'm almost training myself to get used to this whole Qi wireless charging stuff.
You're in the world now.
I still like my cable, though.
And then you also had an app. Since we got a couple more minutes, you could squeeze in and tell us about this app.
Yeah, so along with the whole theme of parenting and, you be your own nanny, parent your own children. Don't make Apple and all these big tech companies do it for you. Trust me, you're going to want it your way. And one of the tools that you can use to do that is an app called iAllowance. You'll probably hear me say it over and over again because it's an app that I live in. So I have to promote it. I really love it. It's called iAllowance, and if you think about what that might be, it's an allowance app to help you teach your kids about money management, about time management. So one of the ways that we're using it to mentor over monitoring our children, we're in control of our own parental controls with our children. We use this app to help track the kids' contributions. I try not to call them chores. They're actually contributions that the children make to the household, whether it's taking out the trash or picking up after the dog or vacuuming the carpet. They get time. We started out with money. You can use money. I do use that part of it. You can have like little separate banks, and one of the banks can be a money bank. And so, for example, every time they get an iTunes gift card or any kind of gift card or cash or birthday money, Christmas, that sort of thing, I tally it up in there and I keep track of it. And you can email yourself reports and you can synchronize it. So this is now synchronized between mine and my husband's phone. Nice. So whenever the kids do something, we give them a check mark, for completing that contribution, whether it's laundry or whatever. And then that just builds up and they get a bank. And the way that we are doing it now is we are building up a bank of time. So they can use that for free choice, whatever they want to do with that time. Now, a lot of times it's screen time because now that we're back to school, we had this nice long winter break. And now that they're back to school, their brains are like churning on academics, and they're just constantly doing stuff that, might not be as much fun for them. And then they have after school activities. So lately they've been wanting to spend their time on screen time. And so I have a little award that I can give them for when they've done a good job, and I can reward them from some screen time. And I've actually worked with the developer on this a long time ago. I'm kind of proud of this. Whenever the kids earn something, I helped him with the sounds. Let's see, do I have it muted? I can play one for you. Whenever a child gets an award, they get ta-da. And if they've misbehaved, they get a
I thought it was gonna be that.
There's a sound like that in there too. So there's different sounds that you can customize, and I love the kind of Pavlovian aspect of it, because all I have to do is whip out the phone, or all the dad has to do. It's like, she's got the phone. I better behave. I'll do it, mommy. So that's a parenting tool that we use that happens to be a really great app that I really love, and I love bragging about it. So I will keep reviewing that, because it's something that I think is really important.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Let's put a bow on it. So thanks for listening, and we hope you're more in touch with iOS after hearing this episode. Subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcatcher, some of the ones that we mentioned, and show your friends how to look for us in iTunes. We're also on Stitcher and in the Google Play Store. We look forward to bringing you more useful information in future episodes. I'm Melissa Davis, and you can find me online all over at the Mac Mommy.
And I am Dave Ginsburg, and I am on Twitter at DaveG65.
Stay tuned and subscribe for future episodes, and thanks for listening.